irrigation. By the way, as I was actually coming in, Benlo is actually just gone out. One of the countries which has really benefited from precision agriculture, precision irrigation is Israel. Israel, by nature, is in a desert setting, significantly desert setting in a number of ways. One, from the agricultural point of view, but also from the fact that they have got people who do not want them to be around them. So one of the things they've really done is to really use this to an extent that if you look from a point of view of harvest, you actually go ahead and realize that because of deliberate application of this, they've really increased their yields tremendously. So in terms of reasons, very few fields are uniform. Mostly current irrigation systems are really not. They are really applying if you see the overhead irrigation, you actually go ahead and realize that it applies it uniformly rather than to go ahead and be cognizant of the differences within, let's say, a specific field. Driving forces, excessive water application avoidance, and apply water directly as required, and as required there being the key thing. Right, so there are different systems. There's the center pivot, which I think we have all seen, of which some of which we moved a bit when we acquired the land, but we have brought it back onto the land now. Then there's the drip irrigation systems, where you can go ahead and use a system to go ahead and offer irrigation technology, and then where you are really using small share of the total irrigation due to high costs, you actually go ahead and realize that even on drip irrigation, there is a problem of the high costs. So this is one of the things we're trying to say, can we go ahead and look at that specific problem through this? So there is irrigation scheduling, where you're basically saying, when do we actually go ahead and apply the specific irrigation? I'll sound like an agriculture person for a second here. You can actually go ahead and do a number of things here. One, where you are guided by the soil moisture content, or where you're actually guided now by the cover of the plant. So where you are really looking at the leaves of the plants to go ahead and say, are they now a bit desperate in as far as the requiring of water is concerned. So here are the ways of doing it. 3 ways of doing it, right? There is the measuring of the soil water, right? Of which that is the one which we actually situated ourselves in. And then there's the checkbook method, where you have got specific pre-assigned times when you're actually supposed to irrigate. And then the last one is remote sensing, which is now actually the one which is really looking at the leaves and the crop. I mean, to look at the crop water content, because I mean it's remote sensing, and then go ahead and then apply the irrigation as required. But in this case, we want to concentrate on number 2 over there, the dielectric constant method, where we used a resistor sensor, because the sensors can actually go ahead and have different technologies. But in this case, we actually used a resistor sensor. So the aim of the research, of this specific research, was to determine the effect of the wireless-based sensor technology or wireless sensor networks when you are irrigating wheat specifically, and then we're actually then coming in and comparing it to the other methods which can actually go ahead and be used. The experimental design, the setup, University of Zimbabwe has got a farm which is actually fairly close to the University of Zimbabwe, just before the Mazowe toll gate. So that is actually where this experiment was located, and it is actually for winter wheat. And the results which we are using for this specific talk are the 2016, 2017, and 2018. I mean, subsequent issues have actually come after that, of course. The topography is mainly, this is actually quite important for us to actually look at the variables. So here we are defining the variables, if you are actually looking at it from a programming point of view. So our variables here, one is wheat, right? 2, it's located in what is it called, zone 1 area. And then 3, the topography is a plain field, less than 8% elevation, right? And then we have got our clay loam soils over there. Why is this important? When you are now actually replicating, you need to actually then go ahead and change all these parameters so that you can then go ahead and generate sufficient data for you to actually go ahead and do the analysis. So the space where we actually used, one of it was 1/4 hectare for the drip irrigation and 3/4 of a hectare for the overhead, which was actually the comparison experiment which we were having in this case. Right, this is probably the table we should. This is a very bad screen, or is it bad resolution? So I need to actually continue looking at that one, which is a bit better. Right, this is probably the table which summarizes everything else. Everything else from here is really just based on this table. So we had a number of experiments. We had 5 types of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 types of drip irrigation, of which the first 4 are sort of like your normal drip irrigation, if I may. And then the ones which are in red, the ones which are red in color, are the ones where we were using the specific gadget which we went ahead and assembled, right? So you actually go ahead and realize that we are going to be referring to that experiment number 415 and number 450 quite a bit. And then of the overhead irrigation which we did, the second overhead was the one which also now used a sensor to actually go ahead and say, if we're using overhead, can we also go ahead and combine the overhead with the sensor? So basically what we're saying is, of the experiments which we did, those 3 are the ones which involved the IoT device which we actually introduced. 2 for the drip irrigation and 1 for the overhead irrigation. Right, here is the wireless connected soil sensor, the whole system, which we actually had with a base station, and you're going to be seeing some ugly looking base stations, and because I mean all of these things were made in the lab or assembled in the lab. They are not yet actually at a commercial level. So there is basically the where we are basically saying there is to summarize that diagram, we're basically saying the controlling of the irrigation itself is actually done by a signal which is coming from the base station and passed to the sensor. And then this whole thing can actually be controlled by someone even through a GSM network. During the times of the experiment, some of the things were actually intervened, even as long as you were actually on the GSM network, you could actually go ahead and intervene. Right? There is evidence that some people were in the field over there. I don't know, the guy maybe who does not have the work suit was pretending to be the manager there. Right? So that is the sensor, which we actually have, the wireless sensor. So we put that wireless sensor. So obviously, where you are positioning the wireless sensor makes a very, very big difference. Because what you are basically saying is, for the diameter around which you have actually put in that wireless sensor, the watering of that point is going to be determined by that specific wireless sensor. So, so what we are basically saying is, the more uniform your field is, the lesser sensors you would actually require. But the less uniform your field is, the more sensors which you actually go ahead and require. Right? And then that's the best station. That's why I was saying these are homemade base stations, which you actually have over there. So I mean, because we're still at an experimental stage, and one of the very interesting aspects about it is, besides our principal researcher, whom we are actually saying should actually be getting a PhD out of this, there were quite a number of undergraduate dissertations which came out of it also. Some of them for the building of these various sensors. So that, I mean, it was really a project which is quite extensive and is involving quite a number of different researchers at different levels, so to speak, right? that is basically just for the overhead irrigation to actually just correspond with the other diagram which we were actually doing for the drip irrigation. Overhead irrigation, there's evidence that actual irrigation actually occurred. You just have to believe me, I guess. Right, now here, we're now talking in terms of that's this point. Okay, it pertains to point. Right, we are now talking in terms of the results themselves. So what I want you to go ahead and remember is OH1 and OH2, right? OH1 and OH2, right? And OH3, right? And also the T3 to actually show that when we're actually talking in terms of the amount of water which was actually applied, there was actually lesser amount, no, the T41, T42, and OH2 to actually show that there is the amount of water which was applied for the same yield over the 3 years was actually far much less than the other instances. And then here we're actually talking in terms of the yield. So the yield, as you can actually see, the yield was almost the same. Was basically, in fact, statistically, the yield was actually the same. What was now different is the amount of water which was actually applied to go ahead and get the same yield. So obviously, what we are basically saying is this is going to work even far much better in places where there is stress in water. If we're actually talking in terms of, let's say, our Matabeleland region, our Mashingo region, if we're now actually coming in and expanding to the whole country. Or in this case, remember, we were looking at wheat, so we were looking at during the winter season when typically in Zimbabwe, it does not rain. So we are actually irrigating in this specific case. Right, so conclusions. Right, so what we are basically saying is local traditional irrigation schemes generally waste water, right? Especially if you are paying for the water, but if you have got a place where you are not paying for the water, that's totally different, because you remember the issue of the inputs and our various sophistication in generating correct agricultural skills. Irrigation scheduling methods had notable effects on growth and yield of winter wheat, as we actually demonstrated from those diagrams. The newly designed automatic irrigated controller treatments, which we were actually referring to, those 3 treatments used far much less water. I mean, statistically, far much less water. And then we are talking in terms of a 25% savings in water here. And then the fabrication of the sensors was actually done locally, and it actually promoted, as I was actually saying, the whole ecosystem of students. These slides are going to be shared. Why am I saying that? Because there's a bit more detail. Okay, next steps. Let me look at the next steps before I actually then look at the more detail, which will be ridiculous, especially I'm a teacher, but that slide is going to shock you, right? So our next steps, more field trials within varying regions and crops, so that we actually go ahead and really make sure that as we're actually fabricating it, we're actually fabricating something which can be a bit more universally used, rather than just concentrating on one region and one type of crop. Use of technologies to improve performance. So we are really looking in terms of aggressive use of IoTs, and then aggressive use of cloud computing as we're actually gathering the data. And then, of course, the usage of machine learning and data analytics, which should really go ahead and improve the agricultural output the moment we have deployed all of these things a bit more globally within the country, of course. And then improvement on the controller, because we really are really cost conscious, where we are saying at the moment our controller is costing, let's say, $70 US, but we want to believe even with what we have so far, we can actually reduce it to $50. But with our Education 5.0 and collaboration between now the universities and the technical colleges, we really believe we can actually go ahead and drive that the cost of that controller even far much down, and then of course improve optimize the performance. I'm an academic, you have to actually put your references so that people also refer to you, right? But otherwise, this is probably where I was actually saying, if people are really interested, these are some of the slides which you should actually go ahead and read, because they are really now giving you a bit more detail than what I have actually given you in this specific presentation. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Doc, for this wonderful presentation. 2 weeks ago, we had a business dinner with Busisa Moyo. So he was talking about the next generations of billionaires. So he said people who are doing agriculture are the next billionaires, but actually forgot to mention that those who will be doing agriculture with the use of technology are going to be the next billionaires. You agree with me that with precision irrigation, one can lower cost when he's doing his farming. So that means he'll make more money. So thank you, Dr. Panyangi, for that. I'll call upon, before I call upon the next speaker, Tawanda J. Chihabak, I'll just give a brief description of his profile. Tawanda J. Chihabak is a technology entrepreneur and international best-selling author. He's also an award-winning technology entrepreneur and founder of Precision Aerial Group, a commercial drone services consultancy and training group of companies based in Zimbabwe operating in Southern and East Africa. Tawanda is a certified drone pilot instructor with multi-rotor fixed wing ratings and a drone system integration consultant. Through Precision Aerial Group, he successfully secured the country license for Zimbabwe Flying Labs, the first drone technology hub in Zimbabwe, and the local country chapter, which is part of the Global Flying Labs network, which is present in over 32 countries globally, and is the world's leading developer of drone technology and robotic solutions for social and humanitarian action covering areas including agriculture, conservation, disaster management, environmental management, youth education, community engagement, and medical and carpet drone deliveries. Is the director of Precision Drone Training, Africa's first integrated professional pilot training school that specializes in delivering advanced industry-specific drone training programs, including training government agencies and non-profit organizations. At this moment in time, I'd like to call upon Tawanda J. Chiambakwe to take to the podium.
Thank you for that interesting welcome. Sounds like a chapter from a book. First of all, thank you so much to the Computer Society of Zimbabwe. First and foremost, President Joyce Benza and your team, thank you so much for inviting me onto this platform. All the past presidents here present, and all the different groupings, chapters that are present here, and particularly to you as delegates, thank you. Before I start, it's always, for me, it's always a privilege when you're invited back to a place to speak. I guess it shows that they still, want to have you in their space. I was invited to the Computer Society of Zimbabwe Summit about 3-4 years ago. I think it must have been 2019 in this very room. So thank you. It's good to be back again. In particular, what I'm going to do today for my presentation is really kind of give you around what we've been doing since that time. Many of you at that time, some of you, this will be the first time that you're hearing about the work that we do in our space. And in particular, I will try and touch on a number of different points. My presentation is really around how we can actually build tech companies within the local space here in Zimbabwe. I'm only using drones, and drones happen to be the thing that we're currently involved with right now, as an example. And our story will be weaved in and out of our presentation as we go. So, to get us started, sorry, help me. Which one am I pointing? Okay, perfect. So thank you to the previous speaker. I heard a lot of precision in your presentation. And so that you know, our name, when we chose the name of our company, we were very strategic years ago when we started in the drone space, because we knew that the term precision is often associated with data, with drone technology, with Internet of Things. So we were very specific when we chose the name, because we knew every time someone talks about precision, they're talking about us, even if they don't realize it. So thank you for that. We appreciate you promoting our brand. So I'm part of an organization called Precision Aerial Group. It's a group of companies that are involved primarily with technology. Right now, our core focus areas are drone technology and robotics. Today's presentation will focus on the drone side of things, but we have also a robotics division that we're currently building out. I will go through what the different companies do a bit later, but for now, I want to give you a bit of context around the drone industry and how it's developed in the local kind of context, as well as in the global space. So starting off back in 2013, was probably the first time that there was a commercial civilian use of drones in the world. You know, beyond what you probably have seen with the Russia-Ukraine war and military applications of drones, drones started being used only by civilians in 2013. Prior to that, drones were particularly a military application and military tool that we as people, as citizens, do not have access to. So the industry in itself is still what we call a very nascent and emerging industry. We are less than, or just reaching now a decade where we've had this technology working and operating globally in that kind of context. That in itself presents a lot of different opportunities, which I'll also share and talk about a bit later. Fast forward to 2015, particularly the number of countries, a few of them, in particular South Africa. I know we've got some guys from South Africa. South Africa, Australia, United States, and the UK were the first ones to develop a framework, regulations around the use of drones. Now, those of you who may or may not know, drones are classified as aircraft, right? So it falls under aviation, and globally, for an industry to develop, and for our industry to develop, we need rules and regulations to be in place. Otherwise, you have guys running around and doing what they're doing now in the Ukraine, where you have citizens doing all sorts of things with drones, right? Okay, then we move on to 2018. We bring it back home now. 2018 was the establishment of our own local regulations here in Zimbabwe, and really what kick-started what we have now as an industry, okay? It took a while for us to lobby and have the government put out these regulations, but thankfully we are still actually ahead of the curve when you look at the context of how Africa as a whole has developed in this space. Now looking at 2021, where we just come from now is, yes, regulations were established in 2018, but only last year do we begin to see implementation of these regulations, right? So we had a document, and we're very good at writing documents, but the implementation of it was only really started to be realized last year. This year, we've seen significant growth and movement from government as well as private sector in terms of the involvement, and I'll be sharing a little bit more about that with you shortly. A few points on the regulations, just so that you know, right? So this is to bring everyone up to speed, so that you know, okay? How many of you guys in this room have seen a drone flying before at all? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, most of you, almost. Okay, maybe a better question would have been, who hasn't seen a drone flying before? Right? So almost all of you have basically seen drones flying, right? Now, the interesting about it is that for you to be able to do and operate drones, either for recreational purposes or commercial purposes, right, there are standards expected and the rules and regulations in place that govern how the technology works and operates, okay? These are just a few of them. Number one, drones must be registered, right, and have a letter of approval. So whether you're buying a drone for fun, I'm sure a lot of you guys in here have children and you want to buy your children drones and that kind of thing.
what you may not be aware of is that even your little drones need to be registered. Why? It's important that the government has a record of where all the different drones are and what they're being essentially used for, in a sense. Okay. Also added to that, commercial applications. I know we have a number of different companies represented here, from telecoms companies to your mines to I saw even like city council, ZRP, etc. Right? I saw quite a large spectrum of different people here. Right? So I know for commercial applications, drones are probably already being used, and I'm sure in some of your companies you're probably using drones already. Right? But for you to do that, there are standards expected and required. Other ones include your height and beam loss restrictions. So there's certain height limits around how high you can fly, where you can go, particularly because drones operate in airspace. Airspace, right, has in itself a standard around the rules of the air. Just like you have rules of the road, when you're driving a car on the road, you've got to adhere to those rules. So that's why it's important that we have the training, the understanding, and people get trained and are compliant around the different regulations that exist. Also, added to that, two other things: approved flight plan. So even if you are licensed, it's important that you have an approved flight plan. So for example, one of the things that we would like to do as well during the summit is to do a demonstration, but at the same time, there's air traffic, right? There's helicopters flying around, taking people around, to the falls and that kind of thing. So for us to be able to actually do that, what we need is clearance. We can't just decide, oh, we're going to go outside and just take off, okay? Because you never know what could happen. Technology is technology, right? If the drone starts flying off in a different direction and collides with the helicopter, then we are basically putting people's lives in danger. Okay, so there's no operation. There's nothing that you're doing with drones that's more important than people's lives. Okay, but people don't think that and think, oh, it's just a drone. What harm can it do? It can do a lot. Lastly, ARPA has operating certificate and insurance. So those are simply just like your company registration, company license for operating drones. So as an individual like myself, right, I'm a certified drone pilot, trained, licensed DTC, but my company as well needs a license to operate drones. Most people end on, okay, you just need a pilot to be licensed, but the company is not compliant in that regard. Yet that's a standard that's required. Okay. The cool thing about our regulations is that we didn't sit down and come up with all these kind of things ourselves, right? I guess it's both positive and negative, but these are standards, right, that are now being used globally. So for us to advance, we also need to make sure that we operate at a certain standard. Right, let's get into the fun part. Drone market size, if you're looking at now, just in terms of where the real work is being done. Okay, 9 times out of 10, if you find someone who's operating drones in this country or any other space, they're in the services industry. So you have people who are hired to provide a service using drones. Okay, so they have a fleet of drones, different type of drones. It could be for agriculture, for security, for mining, for whatever kind of use case. All right. So you'll see there that the majority of people are involved in services. Right. When you look at hardware, you only see that there's about 16%, right, of people actually building drones. Okay, and a smaller percentage of people who are developing the software and the technology around the actual how the drones operate and what you can do with the data and information gathered by drones. So if you were someone going into the industry, where would you want to target, right? Which space would you want to get into, right, if you're going to really maximize and capitalize? Okay, software, right? Okay, so essentially you can be a software company servicing the drone industry, or be in the drone industry, but be directly involved in software and not necessarily trying to buy drones, fly them, etc., etc. Okay, the good thing about software is the regulations around software development, right, are definitely nothing compared to what you have to go through if you want to now actually operate the physical drones yourself. Okay, now let's take a deep dive and look at the money. Where's the money in all of this? Okay, all right. And as an entrepreneur, especially for us in terms of tech, we get hyped up around the tech. But what we need to really look at is where's the money? Right, so let's start off in the regional context. This is South Africa, right? And for all intents and purposes, this information is probably about 2 to 3 years old. Okay. First of all, Bidvest Group there, you can see there, they bought a company called UDS. And interestingly enough, they bought it in 2019. They bought that company for 500 million rand. This is a startup like Precision Aerial, that was providing drone security services, aerial mapping, data processing, etc. What they were is they were a first mover in their country, and they were brought up like that because Bidvest saw the value and where the industry was going. Right? Fast forward. So they buy the company in 2019. What happens 2020? COVID. Right? Now, if you track the drone industry, right? The drone industry is probably one of the only industries that will say thank you, COVID, for happening. Because that accelerated the industry or drones, and people started looking at drones in a way that we would never even imagine. Globally and especially in Zimbabwe, which I'll show you as well. The amount of traction, movement, amount of attention that drones have gotten in the last, for 2020, 2021 is incredible, okay? And there we go, Bidvest have made a wise investment. And in South Africa in particular, the application of drones for security services became one of the most lucrative things that you could have done within the pandemic because no one could go to work. So all the different assets, high value assets, be it from manufacturing to buildings, to mines, to your safaris, all that kind of thing. Everyone wanted drones for security. And who was sitting right there? Bidvest. On the other side, you see South African startup, the Aerobotics, raises 17 million. Please note that 17 million US dollars, okay, right? For AI agriculture platform. Now, in particular, Aerobotics, right, is a software company. They don't own a single drone, right? What they did is they built software that would take the data captured by drones, process, analyze it, and be able to give farmers, in particular, in your vineyards, you know, your wine farmers and that kind of thing, right? Give them information insights around their crops. They've now moved over to things like citrus and etc. But now their scope around that, right, has grown so much to a point now where they are servicing not only the South African market, but they've now expanded. They're now in New Zealand. They're now going into other territories as well. Now, these guys, here's what they do. What they do is they leverage off of drone pilots. So they get the drone pilots, they don't own any drones, all right? So they don't have to deal with the drama, all right, of regulations and compliance and have to buy the tech. What they do is they basically put out a call and say, right, drone pilots, we need this data capture. We need these areas mapped with these drones. So the guys who have the license, have the drones, they go and map, they get paid, they pay them for their work, and they focus on the data, okay? Value add. Let's move on. In particular, Africa is a very interesting place. The development of the drone industry globally, right? A lot of the testing, in fact, the majority of the testing has been in Africa. Africa has been a test bed and continues to be the test bed for drone applications, right? You have, without a doubt, probably the highest number of foreign companies in a particular industry, in the drone industry, coming from outside of Africa and investing in this space. Why? Because of issues to do with infrastructure. The gap between how we operate and how our infrastructure is set up and how you've got your first world countries, they've got the infrastructure, whereas we don't. So simple applications like Zipline, right? They became and still are probably the largest medical drone delivery company in the world, okay? Now they're no longer medical delivery, now they're just calling themselves logistics, right? Which makes sense, 100%. Where did they start? In Rwanda, right? They started in Rwanda. They started delivering medicine from your urban to your rural kind of space. They got a nice government contract, and since then they've been flying high. Now they have operations in Ghana, in Nigeria, and in Kenya. The problem with these kind of organizations is that they're what we call cannibals, right? So when they come into a space, they block everyone else out. So you'll find that for us in the drone industry, we're looking at them and everyone's like, this is cool, this is amazing, that the innovation is at this level where now, COVID-19 vaccines and that kind of thing, they delivered over 1 million vaccines in Rwanda alone, then expanded to Ghana and different places. So they've delivered millions and millions of vaccines using drones now. In Ghana, it's now become the standard, and they're shifting to make it a standard around how you get your critical kind of medicines from your rural to peri-urban, peri-urban to rural kind of spaces. Okay? But where are the local players, right? And here's the interesting thing about it is when we look at it, and I'll have to do a shameless plug here, you guys have to read my book, okay? Read my book. right? So one of the things I wrote about when I contributed to the 2 books that I've been privileged to be part of is the issue around foreign being better, okay? It's a challenge that I feel like we don't necessarily address enough, is that our internally, right? Let's start off here, just amongst this room here. Someone comes here and he's telling you about drones, right? He tells you, oh, we can do this with drones, and and you're like, nah, but I know you, Tawanda, I know you. We used to do this, I know you. But if I bring, is anyone from Germany here? I'm gonna use Germany as an example. Anyone German here? Don't want to offend anyone. Oh, you're German? Okay, great. So if a German guy comes here, right? And starts telling you about drones, who are you gonna listen to? Who are you gonna believe? The German guy, right? But I can show you my profile, right? I can do my whole profile. I've done this, I've done that, But the German guy's got nothing. And he's just like, whatever in his language, in German or whatever. And he's like, no, it's better like this. Who are you gonna believe? You're gonna believe them, right? And let's multiply that now. What are our governments doing? And in particular in the drone industry, this is a big fight that we have and we're trying to push for now, is that in countries like Rwanda, okay? Everyone talks about Rwanda. It's amazing, you do all these things. Great. Where's the empowerment of the locals, right? What's so brilliant and amazing about Zipline coming in, except that they're American and they have money and they have all this clout? What about the local guys who are trying to do the same thing? Guess what happens? Locals get hit with regulations. Okay, you want to do this? Okay, here's the rule book. Americans come into the space, and guess what happens? Well, look, it's going to look good for our PR, right? We're going to look really good. So let's just waive these things for now. We'll sort it out as we go. Unfortunately, that's the reality of it. And it's a big problem, right? And something that I'm not happy about at all. Because at the end of the day, the local people understand the technology. Local people have that. The difference, to be honest, to be fair, is money. The difference is these guys come with big money, they talk big, they do this, and it's just, okay, great. You guys can come in and do these things. That is a problem that we're having within the drone industry. So much so that now, look at context. Rwanda is an example. Kenya, I've just come back from a trip in Kenya. Kenya is now, Zipline just moved into Kenya, and it's now causing havoc in the local market and the local space. I have friends of mine who were trying to develop a medical drone delivery platform for 2-3 years, couldn't get funding. They've now been pushed out. Now they're looking for a job. Now they're looking to work for a drone company. And I'm like, no, guys, why are we not supporting the locals, right? Malawi is a crazy use case. Malawi is there's probably more activity in the drone industry in Malawi than any other country. Not that they have an advanced industry, but there's so many international companies, Australian companies, German companies, companies from, I don't know, from the States, whatever, right? Plus your nonprofit NGOs who are funding all of this activity within Malawi so that they can have a space to have a test bed and do whatever they want. There are no local players, but there is so much activity happening there. That is a problem. Anyway, moving right along, I can do my whole presentation just on that and the issues around that, right? Okay, so anyway, so Zipline raises $250 million US, right? And the valuation is now either $2 or $3 billion, okay? Please note, Zipline was not allowed to test their medical delivery drones in America. That's why they came to Rwanda, because they didn't want to risk, right? And they were saying, no, we can't have you flying over people's houses and whatever. No, you're not doing it here. So they went to Rwanda, did this for 4 or 5 years, and then only beginning of this year, did they get approval from the FAA in America to say, okay, now you can come. Because now they've proven they have all this data to show that their things work. After that, they raise all this money. And guess what? Oh, we're no longer medical, we're logistics now. And now they've got some deal in Japan to do logistics for like, what is this? Like cargo, like, like ships and all this kind of things, like cargo things. So the reality is the story they come with is, oh, we're helping people. No, we're raising money so that we can do what we really want to do. Wingcopter, a German company, raises another 42 million. So Wingcopter is on Series E now in terms of fundraising. Wingcopter only operates in Africa. Only. That 42 million that they've raised it on the premise of saying our goal is to have 12,000 large-scale fixed-wing drones in almost, well, spread across Africa. So their target market is Africa. They're going after every single country in Africa. They're like, we're going to set up base everywhere. That's their plan for the next 10 years. That's why they got the $42 million, so that they can expand here. Where are the locals? Anyway, let's move on. Let's come back home. What's happening at home? Earlier this year, mid-year, we had a bit of advancement and movement in the local space when it comes to drones in the local context. It's not as glamorous as what's happening elsewhere, but it's a significant move forward. Officially the first parastatal, if it's a parastatal, or government entity, right, to basically get full certification. That's both the ROC, the RPAS operating certificate that I started telling you about, the company license, as well as getting their pilots certified. So they're the first government entity to be able to officially be able to use drones for commercial purposes. For them, they're doing it for inspections of power lines. So you imagine the national grid. And please note, this is significant because ZESA is the first power utility across Africa to do this, okay? We don't celebrate our own achievements enough. We don't celebrate the work that we've done enough. And that's something that's always celebrated, right? Oh, by the way, we did helping as well behind the scenes. So, anyway, so ZESA has done really well. Right now, as it stands, there are actually only 6 companies in Zimbabwe that are actually legally allowed to operate drones. And they include 2 government entities now. The other one is Zimbabwe Consolidated Diamond Company, ZCDC, yeah, that one. And the rest are private, like us, okay? Other companies, other locals that are trying to do something with drones, Zimra is going ahead and they basically set aside $2 million to get drones for border patrol. This is particularly to enhance security around the borders. This is a project that's been ongoing for now about 3 years. Hopefully implemented soon. This is exciting, I guess, in terms of what things could look like. Another one is Zimpox. Zimpox is using drones. Whilst they're trying to be compliant and work on getting compliant, they are currently using drones. If you follow the stories, you'll actually hear that some of the Zimpox drones actually apprehended some guys who had hijacked a bus that was on its way to like Bedridge or to South Africa or something like that. So the Zimpox drones are not just catching poachers, they're catching thieves and robbers and hijackers. Right. So, these are very good examples of what's happening in the local kind of space and what's been happening. And a lot of this has been happening, again, driven by the need to find new and better ways and more efficient ways to do work, all right, to transform the way we do work. Now, a little bit about what we have been doing in the local space. So Precision Aerial, for us, this is one of our divisions. We are involved in drone services. We have a branch here in Harare, well, not here in Harare. Sorry, I'm used to that. But in Zimbabwe, and also a branch in South Africa. And I'll tell you an interesting story about that. Our partners in South Africa, and thank you, past presidents and your current president. Our partner in South Africa, we met in here at the last conference, right? They heard us speak, and after that, we connected, we networked, and from that point, about a year later, during COVID, we actually set up and established a branch in Johannesburg through that. So thank you, Computer Society, for that, and I guess an encouragement to you guys to make sure you network, eh? All right, after this, cool. I work with drones in mining, so I won't touch too much in terms of mining. Mining has been probably the fastest adopter as a single sector of drones around the world, simply because the use cases are obvious, okay? The things that you can do with drones and mines are incredible, just in terms of bringing efficiency, saving time, human resources, be it on your kind of large-scale surveying, be it an open cast or underground mining, etc. So there are a lot of different solutions in that space. And I won't belabor the point on that. In particular, some of the different surveys and things that we do in the space is to give data and information that helps surveyors to make better decisions, project managers to decide where to drill, where not to drill. We're able to send drones underground now, where you would normally send people to go into surveying. Now we can send the technology down there and literally protect and save lives, right? This is something that's going to continue growing at scale. There are a few mining companies that have gone all the way with this, but I can safely say there is no mining company that is serious, right, in this country that doesn't already own drones or getting the service already, right? There's just so many different things that we can do in that space. So that's a particular area that we've been involved with, but actually in the process of moving out of. The area that we've currently been focusing on, and thank you, Doc, previous presenter, for doing a very good introduction to the agriculture and precision agriculture space. This is an area that we are currently fully immersed in and focused in, because for us, it's kind of the focus in terms of, yes, we want to, have tech, do things that matter, but also the value at the end of the day is food security is the end result and the end goal at the end of the day. Okay. So what we've been doing in this space here, looking just quickly at the use of IoTs in a kind of a smart farming context, and how drones are being used now to gather data. Many of you will know about this in more in-depth kind of detail. Some of you may already be employing the technology in those spaces. But in particular, what we do is we use a platform like this. This is one of our large-scale aerial mapping type of drones. We can cover in terms of mapping. I know there's data that was being talked about in the previous presentation and gathering that information. So we would use a drone like this to gather that data information, analyze it, and be able to then go and work with farmers and be able to say, right, this is what's happening with your crops, right? This drone here is a large-scale aerial mapping drone, SenseFly EBX, that we've got from our partners in Switzerland. This one is able to do 500 hectares in 2 hours, which is amazing in terms of coverage, and probably one of the top 2 aerial mapping drones in the world right now. Some of the projects, this is a particular project, one of the things that we're working on about 2 weeks ago. This is just some data from a tobacco farmer who had planted, because now it's farming season, right? So he planted his tobacco, and that's about part of what, is that a 10 hectare kind of, those circle things? Yeah, maybe a 10 hectare plot. So he planted his tobacco, for example, right? And in particular on the left there, I don't know if you can see clearly, you probably can't, because this is probably more of a low res. On the left there, you'll see within those circles, there are these little white dots or circular dots. You see those? They look like dots to you guys, but they're patches, right? Particularly those patches are areas where when you look at post-emergence, right, there's actually nothing growing there, okay? And for him, he noticed that in one area, but for him to be able to tell to what extent, right, is this issue, affecting his crop, and to make a decision whether to replant or not, right? He can't do that at this level and ground level, walking around, which is why we then bring in the technology and are able to map this. I mean, it took us maybe 45 minutes to map this. The next day we had the data out and he was able to make a decision there and then to say, I'm replanting the whole field, okay? Versus waiting another 3 weeks, 4 weeks, it grows, then you realize I've got all these patches, and where I had estimated that my yield was going to be a certain amount, it's going to be far less than that. So this is one of the ways in which we're leveraging and using the technology to bring in, right, these specific insights, and using this data and leveraging it to help make sure that we improve our yields, to make sure that we ensure food security, helping farmers to make better decisions. That's essentially what we're doing in a nutshell, all right? Some of the benefits of using drones within the space that we talk about here is accurate data collection, on-demand aerial perspective, image analysis and phenotyping, yield estimation. We have a current project working with some of the agricultural research companies in Zimbabwe, where we're looking at using multispectral sensors to get your I don't know if it's familiar with the NDVI indexes and that kind of thing. So we're looking at crop health. So we're able to tell whether crops are healthy or not, and help them make decisions around, okay, do we need to add in more fertilizer? Do we need more water? What is the issue at the end of the day? Okay, so that's really what we're doing with drones in that space. Then in particular, and I think the subject of our demonstration, which we'll do and show you guys tomorrow, is in particular this drone here. This is the DJI T30 agriculture drone. So I already mentioned the large-scale aerial mapping drone. This is the DJI T30. How many of you guys are interested in aeroplanes, in planes at all, in one way or another? Okay, great. So there's Boeing and there's Airbus, right? Okay. Now within the Airbus family, right? I'm now becoming Airbus fan, right? Within the Airbus family, they have different ranges: A3, 18, 20, 30, 40, whatever. Then there's the A380. isn't it? All right. This is the A380 of commercial drones that you're seeing there. Okay, right there. Okay, all right. And I'm sure you guys will get to see that as well tomorrow, and you'll see why we're saying that. Okay. When I say commercial and commercial more civilian, I'm not talking about your military. Yes, in military you'll get bigger ones, but for those that we can buy as citizens and normal people, this is the biggest you're going to get. There's nothing bigger than this right now. In particular, so we've basically started operating these drones. This is a video. How do I play? Can you guys play from your end? So this is one of our T30 drones operating. This is in Eastern Highlands. I can't say exactly where, but one of the client sites where we're actually delivering services now and doing precision crop spraying with the Agris T30. And what it's helping us to do is to actually be more efficient in how we dispense fertilizers and make sure that we can deal with issues around our crops, be it trees, plants, etc. quickly. Okay. And then how do I move next? Okay. Yeah, you can play that one as well. All right. So you'll see, I don't know, you might not be able to see the size and the scale of it from the video. I think it's something that you need to definitely see more in person to kind of get the scale of it. But what this drone can basically do is, right, you know where you use your handheld knapsack sprayers, right? Those sprayers, or a boom sprayer. This is now the way to do things. Here's the cool thing about this, right? And we've been working with farmers quite a bit, where a farmer would hire an employee. Let's say you guys have, let's say someone, I know you guys are farmers. You have a 10-hectare plot, okay? You get to a point where to get into the field quickly to deal with either pests or disease or whatever it is, right? It could be fall armyworm, it could be whatever it is, right? And ideally now you'd have to hire and get all these knapsacks, etc., and you'd have to hire people, etc., right? Now, according to the data we have, it takes a person with a knapsack for them to spray 1 hectare, right? It takes them, in fact, they can only do about 0.8 to 1 hectare per day, okay? And this is per person per day, all right? Now that person, and this is how we calculate now the thinking and the maths around it, right? That person needs 3 things. Tanganda tea at 10, Sadza at 1, and by around 4 o'clock, okay? If you don't then give them something to top up, right? Law of diminishing returns kicks in, maybe around 2:30. Sun is out, it's hot. Do you really think that person is spraying? No, they just wanted to get through it. And they just like, and if they don't see you there monitoring them, guess what? They spray here and then they just walk around, da, 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 da. Worse if they have a phone. Then they're not doing anything, right? So that's why we end up getting the 0.8 to 1 hectare. But even when they do that, you're not sure that the spraying was done properly. Only later will you realize that no, the spraying wasn't done properly, okay? Now bring in the technology. This drone here, the A380, can do 16 hectares per hour, right? Where one person takes 1 hectare a day. Now we can do 16 per hour with this. And we can automate it. So in this particular one, all we do is we set the flight path, the flight plan for it, okay? We basically map out the farm to 10 hectares, segment the area, take that data, upload it into this drone, right? Into the remote controller for it, send it, it goes. While the pilot is sitting there in the shade, pretending to actually be working, right? The drone is doing the work. The job of the pilot is simply to change batteries and change whatever liquid it is, all right? This is the future of farming. This is where we should be going. We should have a national program for this kind of stuff at scale, all right? Makes sense, right? Why aren't we doing it, guys? All right. Okay. So moving right along, some of the other things we do that are maybe not as exciting and cool. We're involved also in construction, so we help to, you know what disruption does? Well, the thing with disruption is that if you don't see it, right, you're going to be left behind, and it's going to be very difficult for you. So the job of surveyors, so you've got your normal surveyors who come. So let's say you want to build a housing development, right? You get surveyors, right, to come in, and then they do their mapping of the area. They charge a certain fee. It takes them, 2-3 days. Now with the drone, we come in there 30 minutes, we're in or out, we're done, and we give you data, high resolution, higher information. And then you wonder, you're like, oh, these guys went to university for 4 years to do this? Are you for real? It's actually a sad reality of what's happening. And I worry more about what's happening in our universities and what they're teaching, right? Because I'm like, yo, you're giving yourself a disservice, right? I know young guys who are coming out of high school who get it. I mean, there's a guy who's like 20 years old and he's running around doing all these surveys and doing all this stuff, taking up jobs that guys are still in school doing 4-year degrees for. And I'm like, yo, we have a real serious gap here. But anyway, often what then happens is that those surveyors will try and discount the quality of the data to say, it doesn't work. Meanwhile, things are moving forward. Right, drones for security services. This is just something we do, but we only talk about it privately, so I can't show you any examples. But you can talk to me afterwards if you want some drone security services. All right. Training. So we mentioned already, we're training school. Earlier this year, we were officially certified by the Civil Aviation Authority of Zimbabwe to establish precision drone training, which is the second school now in Zimbabwe. So there are only 2 training schools where you can actually get trained and certified and licensed to operate drones for all commercial purposes. But we're the first school within the African space that has advanced training programs. Most training schools focus on the basics and basically the bare minimum that the civil aviation requires. And then that's it. So you get a license and it's like, oh, you can fly a drone. The reality is you can fly a drone, but you don't have the industry specific context and focus to be able to use drones effectively for agriculture, for mining, for etc. So that's what we focused on. We focus on training professionals. We go into the mines and the mining space now. We say, okay, look, let's have in context, this is what we can do. Part of the pathway in terms of becoming a drone professional, as I mentioned, most schools, right, in Africa, not Zimbabwe, Africa, they focus on level 1, okay? The remote pilot license. That is the legal document that the civil aviation issues once you've trained and got the basics. The unfortunate part about it is it's an academic process and it just covers the bare basics. What we've done is we've then developed through our international partnerships, these advanced industry-specific training courses. So we focus on developing the capacity in agriculture, conservation, disaster management, etc. Last week, we completed a disaster management advanced training course with the Civil Protection Unit to help them prepare for the disaster season, right? Rainy season produces, for us, is also disaster season. So we know December, January, there's going to be flooding, there's going to be this and that. So what we're doing is building capacity within the Civil Protection Unit to be able to then leverage the technology, be it for search and rescue, be it for post-disaster assessments, and that kind of thing. Right, some of the training courses, the advanced courses. So the middle one there, that is the first and primary course that we're required to offer as a civil aviation, under the civil aviation regulations. The other ones are the ones that we developed ourselves. These are just a few of them. We've got quite a number of them, and you can always get more information about that later. These are some of our students who are learning about crop spraying. So these guys completed their advanced training course in aerial crop spraying. And then next, quickly, our other division, our other branch. So when I was being introduced, there was part of mention about this license that we received, right? So Precision Aerial, the group, holds the license for Zimbabwe Flying Labs. And Zimbabwe Flying Labs is part and parcel of a global network of drone technology and robotics hubs. We are now established in 36 countries around the world as of last month. And what we focus on is how do we use drones and robotics for social impact, okay? In particular, I think our network has grown quite considerably over the last couple of years. And I think the story around it is something that I can probably show you guys. If we can play that video quickly. Do you have a cue? Maybe not. Are we good?
Starting out in Nepal, Tanzania, and
volume.
2016, the Flying Labs network has grown into a thriving global network of flying labs spread across 30+ countries in Africa, Asia, Latin America, Central America, the Caribbean, South Pacific, and beyond. Our network keeps growing in size. Go fast, together we go far. Flying Labs are independent, country-led knowledge hubs that convene local experts and leaders in professional drone, data, robotics, and AI services. Collaborating with local government and community partners in the humanitarian, health, environment, and development sectors, local level capacity and tech expertise, implement sustainable solutions within our communities, and contribute to local ecosystems to catalyze positive social impact.
Each of our flying labs autonomously decides on their own activities and services we offer, ranging from pilot projects and professional training to advocacy and policy support, events and knowledge exchange. We facilitate ecosystem and organize youth and entrepreneurship program to contribute to our local economies and to talented workforce of tomorrow.
In addition to the direct impact that our activities create, we want to shape the mindsets of local stakeholders on local expertise and value of emerging technologies. We also want to improve the enabling environment for emerging technologies in our countries. Flying Labs are hosted by existing local non-profit, for-profit, and academic organizations with proven experience in applying emerging technologies to social challenges. Close to 1/3 of our Flying Lab leaders are women.
We are locally led, self-financed, and by offering ourselves to local governments, businesses, NGOs, and universities.
Each of our Flying Labs gain value from the group 5 key pillars: connection, knowledge, technology, opportunity, and visibility.
Love being part of Flying Labs because we know our force is our unity.
Is so much wealth of knowledge which you cannot get anywhere.
We get closer look on the critical problems and solutions of fourth industrial revolution.
Yes, we're based in Zimbabwe, but we have global reach.
We, the local experts, are best placed to bring the needed abundance of solutions to meet the growing challenges affecting our communities and countries.
Emerging technologies such as drones, data, robotics, and artificial intelligence are the tools we use to accelerate and expand locally led action in humanitarian, health, development, and environmental efforts.
Sharing and collaboration are the network's key values. We share lessons learned and best practices across the globe, train each other, and collaborate on joint projects. We grow and build the collaborative strength of the network and contribute to its overall success and impact.
So join us if you are a local organization with a demonstrated track record in the use of drones, robotics, data, and AI. Join an existing Flying Labs or co-create your own. You'll find all the needed information on our website at www.flyinglabs.com.
Okay, great. So that was just a quick video around Flying Labs and who we are and what we do. So I'm not going to labor that. Just as I wrap up my presentation, just some of the things that we looked at when we are looking at the challenges around growing the drone industry, in particular for us, has been an issue around the incorrect mindset and also having limited knowledge on the commercial applications of drones. And in a sense in itself, right, that has also contributed to us having a lack of access to capital and funding, right, for us as startups, right? I mean, who wouldn't want to get $17 million US, right, for the enterprise, right? I'd love that. I'd definitely love that, you know, right? What we need to do for the industry to thrive and go forward: training, innovation, collaboration. For us, collaboration, we've tried by all means to work with local people, and some people see your idea and then they're like, oh, this thing could make money. Then they decide, look, I'd rather be your competition than to work with you, right? And that's just the way it is, you know, that's just the way it is at the end of the day. The books At the end, if you would like a copy of Drone Professional 1, Drone Professional 2, those books are available. They are both Amazon bestsellers now, and they've done really, really well in the global kind of context and are now resources around the industry. We also established last year our own conference. So under the group, we are the founders and curators of the Zimbabwe International Drone Conference. We've rebranded now. And this year we had our second event, which is now a regional event, bringing together, and it's really the premier gathering of drone technology professionals, the stakeholders from across Southern Africa. So in that regard, we are really trying to establish the networks and drive things going forward. Lastly, what I'll share with you around is our social impact focus and the work that we're doing in this space. During COVID, we developed a program called Drone System Education, which is designed specifically to go into schools and to start to teach young learners about the future of work and how drones are completely revolutionizing the way things work. So in particular, we're trying to teach young kids who want to be doctors to get them to understand why drones, how drones can help in delivering public healthcare, things like that, right? And across so many different other examples and industries. For us, we're trying to tackle also the issue around high unemployment and the things around there, and also the lack of technology exposure, right? So the deficit in terms of technology exposure is incredible. We're very academic focused, but not enough hand skills, not enough practical transferable skills, right? So our young learners are coming out of school wanting to go back into school and just learn, hoping that will then create all these different prospects for them. Whereas the reality of it is that's not the way to go. For us, what we've done with that is we've developed education programs. So we've got drone clubs and drone camps that we run constantly. We're currently now in 7 schools, primary schools, where we're actually delivering these training programs on a weekly basis. And we're trying to grow and expand from there. So we've got now these trainings happening in Harare, as well as established in Bulawayo. As of beginning of October, we now have established this as well beyond the borders of Zimbabwe. And we started doing this in Nairobi, in Kenya, in particular. And we have one of the schools there that we now have people trained that we're actually delivering on a weekly basis. Part of what we've been able to do as well is in the last year or so, we've had and been able to train over 1,000 young learners who have participated in our programs. Now we're looking for obviously corporate support and partners to help us drive this and drive our growth moving forward. Our goal is to be able to reach 10,000 young learners, right, with this kind of education and training, right, over the next 5 years. Particularly focused, obviously, demographics and making sure that there's inclusivity in terms of women and that kind of thing. Last year as well, we won 2 international awards for this education program because it's definitely more on the innovative side of things. So we were fortunate enough to be placed first in this competition in the African Middle East region and then second globally. And then participated in other kind of events going forward, including the UN Summit as well last year, looking at ethical use of drone technology. Lessons learned. Don't give your power away too early. One of the first things that we actually had as an issue was around funding. So we've always wanted to, obviously expand and grow. But when we initially found partners, our partners wanted to gobble us up, basically, and completely take us out in terms of having shareholding and control. And this was a time when we were like, wow, I mean, just to have someone make an offer for us was a big deal, So 3-4 years ago, we had an amazing offer. And the offer was pack your bags, shut down shop in Zimbabwe and come move over to this country and we'll fund you, we'll run this thing. We've got a bigger market here, let's do it there. And for us, the only reason we said no is because, and for me, I told myself, I was like, look, I was raised at a time where I was taught it's 50 plus 1. If I don't have 51% ownership, then I'm not doing the deal, all right? And for me, it was more so because of having to have that management control, right? At least in the early stages and the growth stage of the business. Yes, there'll come a time when you won't be able to, kind of wave that flag and be like 51%, but not until we've created value. Find partners and build trust, another thing as well. Tell your story. So shameless plug, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. So here I post all sorts of different videos around the industry. I saw Dr. Nigel talking about his Twitter and follow me. So subscribe. Thank you guys. Please do that. Tell your story. And thank you to TechZim. I know TechZim is represented here, Libikani and the team. They have told our story as well and our journey and helped get the word out about what we're doing, even when we can't tell our story well enough ourselves. So we need, the media, we need people in the space to be telling our stories to get the word out there. Customers and cash flow customers plus cash flow is king, all right? Customers is one thing, having cash flow is critical. I put those pictures up there because we've been able to, fortunately, in the last year, acquire a number of nice toys. I think we've spent this year alone, probably close to $100,000 just on drones alone. We've built up our fleet quite a bit. I think our asset base now on drones is touching close to 200,000 now. But where's the money, right? You gotta have money in the bank. You gotta have money to fund the operations. You have money to hire. And that's part of one of the things that as a startup in the tech kind of space is you have the thing, you have the product, but to have operations run, to have things going, we need the funding, we need the support. So I don't know if this is a pitch for funding, but it's not supposed to be. All right, and then lastly, lastly, it's not working. So I might have to end there because this thing's not working. Yes, be relentless until you find your market. We've moved into Kenya. So this was the first time I was in Kenya this is 2020. That was the first time I was in Kenya. I'd been invited to go to a global competition, and was selected. So this is my first time in Kenya, 2020. Second time in 2021, right? And then a month ago, we launched Drones for Good Kenya, a platform in Kenya. So now we've established the base there to actually bring in some solutions within the Kenyan market that we are now looking at kind of growing and kind of being in that space, basically building up a network and community that brings together the entire drone industry on one platform and then aggregates jobs, opportunities, and that kind of thing on one platform. So this is something that we're doing in Kenya. Don't ask me why Kenya. It's a big market, guys, right? We'll bring it home soon, don't worry, okay? And then lastly, and this is my final slide, my last lesson, be intentional about resting. Take a break and enjoy the African sun once in a while. I remember as a tech founder, entrepreneur, one of the things that affected me the most last year was burnout. There was a point at which I could really burnt out because it was all work, late hours. I used to have what we call a day shift and night shift, and it was just one thing after the other until eventually I couldn't, right? And my body basically shut down. So now I'm intentionally learning about taking breaks, taking rest. So thank you, Computer Society. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be at Vic Falls and taking a break this weekend. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tawanda Chihambakwe. Thank you very much for the disruptive thinking that you're bringing across. At this moment in time, I'd love to call upon the Executive Director. She has got something to give to our speakers. Okay, I'll start with Dr. Nigel Chanakira.
Chanakira ita? Moira ita? Dr. Pani. Kusra Dr. Pani.
May I have Moira, if she's around? Then the gentleman from Dadam Tande. I have Martin.
Atsikise again kamera.
Okay, we have the disruptive thinker from Siemens. Here we have Amit from Oracle. He seems to also out. Okay, maybe Dr. Angry. Then for Mr. Tawan, I think it was going to be good if you brought us your drone to give you a present. Okay, at this moment in time, I'd love to call upon Mr. Saruchera. Maybe, maybe not.
Yes. Good afternoon once again, everybody. I just trust you're all being inspired. The whole essence about this was just so that, you know, we're talking about rethinking the future, but we can't talk about the future without the experiences of those who have done it before and gone before and looked at how they're applying these futuristic technologies and how the emerging technologies are going to make a difference in our lives. That was the whole intention, to try and make it as practical and as pragmatic as possible. I think you've heard the presentation in the morning, what Siemens is doing, you know, how they're leveraging on the current technologies and what is it that we need to do. We learned a lot. Obviously, the scenario that Tawanda Chiambakwe was talking about, and I think it's just, the reason why we brought it is because it's just a typical example of what does it take to build a tech industry. I can see our guest of honor, I think they've just gone out. Are they coming back?
I don't want it.
Is he coming back? Is it right now? Okay. Okay. All right. Our guest of honor is already arrived. So I think they're just doing a brief, they're doing a briefing with him. The Deputy Minister of ICT is now here. Unfortunately, our minister, yes, he couldn't be with us, but he's well represented in his office, but his deputy is right here and has since arrived. So they're doing that brief. There's something that we've organized for us to do with him just this afternoon, but I think it's not a problem. I know we are tech people, we are ready any moment, right? We adjust when things are necessary and we do what is appropriate. So the reason I was just summarizing in terms of why, you know, Tawanda and why here, it is just to demonstrate what is possible. Is it possible for us to build a tech industry in Zimbabwe? And what is it that we need to do that, which is some of the discussion I think that we'll do tomorrow. And we've got a session that is specific around that you all can fire. I know you are burning with questions. You're burning with wanting to answer some of the things that you need to answer. So we'll deal with that tomorrow appropriately. And obviously, Dr. Nigel, with what he challenged us, you know, are you a disruptor? Think disruptively is what he has challenged us to do this morning. And I think that's exactly what is happening in some of the scenarios. We asked, you know, the room is supposed to be, we need to make the room available for this evening with all your great indulgence. We are Democrats, right? We know those who just shove things down the throat. So we are now looking at the time and the things that we've had to adjust. We are proposing that we can break. But if for those that want to then do, you know, in terms of the leadership and the innovations and the challenges that are there, there's a meeting next door to do that exactly for those in leadership positions or those aspiring, so that we are inspired and we just have some discussions around that and how we can help each other. So it's available next door, the room next door. As of now, we need to, you know, vacate this room. We had set a time, I don't know if Doc, you're ready, and your team, to just do a quick summary for us, or maybe we'll do it here. It's fine, we can do that, we can rearrange that. Who brought Doc here? Okay, what we're supposed to cover is the discussions that we just want to do is what are those, you know, how do we face the disruption in ever-changing times? What are the things that we need to look at? So when I'm talking about the leadership, is to say, those of us who are already leaders from where you're coming from, you are leading projects, and we just want you to have a platform that you can exchange information around that, okay? Just for about 30 minutes. And then obviously we, you know, the other ones will then, I think because of time, we'll probably not worry much about it. And then in terms of the strategic trends, for those of us who are now into the actual building for architectures, what are the trends in application architecture and the challenges around that and how we can deal with that, so that some of you can now share those scenarios and examples. That's what we just wanted to do. But it's a time for just relaxing and interacting. And feel free to engage all the presenters, please. When you've got questions, go to them, face them, and pose the appropriate questions around there so that you see how you can help each other. I don't know if that is a fair deal for everybody to do that, and that's going to happen next door. You can just grab your tea and you do what you need to do. Yes, sir. We have two rooms, Gwai and Kazuma. So what we can do is in one of the rooms, we can talk about this disruption in ever-changing times and what we can share, the experience, especially for those in leadership or that are leading, you know, organizations in terms of tech readiness and stuff like that. And then the other room, we're talking about, you know, the application of, you know, strategic trends in architecture. So those are the two choices at this moment. So room Gwai and Kazuma. Which one is Kazuma? Gwai, I know is next door, but I'm not sure which one is Kazuma. SOS. I know there are people in the other one. If they have freedom, just confirm which one is Kazuma. Oh, that's outside. I don't know, quick comments, I suppose, as we wait to confirm which one is Kazuma. Also one next door to us. Thank you very much for that. All right. So Kazuma. So in Kazuma, we're talking about the architectural stuff. And then next door in Gwai, we're talking about the disruptions. But otherwise, it's a restaurant. What time are we meeting back here? After those sessions? Sorry. Yes, so we're back in here at 6 o'clock for the dinner. Other than that, you will allow me to ask people to leave and do what they need to do. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Convener. Otherwise, thank you very much, everybody. We'll not take too much of time. Enjoy the rest of the afternoon, what's left of it. We appreciate you accordingly. Amen.
Hmm?